China's most high-profile trial in decades will begin this Thursday when ousted Communist Party chief Bo Xilai enters court on corruption charges. I'm Deborah Kahn. Joining me now is reporter Jeremy Page. Okay, Jeremy, you've been covering this scandal for a long time now. Would you say that the verdict is pretty much a foregone conclusion that Bo Xilai will be convicted?
Well, that's certainly the view amongst legal experts and lawyers, including people acting for Mr. Bo. The court system here is very tightly controlled by the Communist Party. There's a conviction rate of about 98% in criminal cases. And usually the verdict and the sentence is decided in advance behind closed doors. And so the court case itself, the trial is just a formality. And in this case, we're really only expecting it to last 1 or maybe 2 days.
Okay, and of course he's being accused of abusing power and taking over $3 million worth of bribes. What type of sentencing, if convicted, would go along with those types of charges?
Well, that's the thing we're not quite sure about. The verdict is pretty much a foregone conclusion, as we discussed. The sentence, there's quite a bit of flexibility there. And what his lawyers are saying are that there's been a recent high-profile case involving the former railways minister who was also accused of corruption, but involving much larger sums of money. And he received a suspended death sentence, which in China is usually commuted to life in prison. Mr. Bo's wife, Kailai, who was convicted for the murder of this British businessman last year, she also got a suspended death sentence. So what Mr. Bo's lawyers are saying is that it's very unlikely he would get anything, that he would actually get the death penalty. A suspended death sentence is the absolute maximum, but it's quite probable that it could be less than that, so just a long prison term.
Okay, and of course you mentioned his wife, Kailai. There's been a lot of talk about what her role will be in the trial. What do we know, and do we know if she's going to make an appearance at all?
Well, Mr. Bo's lawyers say that they are expecting her to provide testimony to the prosecutors. In fact, she'll probably be the main witness for the prosecution. At the end of her trial last year, the court said that it had taken into account that she provided information about unspecified other crimes. So she'd been providing some cooperation there. Also, a party document that details the charges against Mr. Bo say very clearly that he's accused of taking bribes through his wife. So the question is, really, this testimony that she provides, will it just be in written form, or will she actually appear in court? Which is, both can happen in Chinese courts. It's relatively unusual to actually have the witness in court. And what Mr. Bo's lawyers and other people close to him are saying is that if she does actually appear in court, he's not going to be happy about that, and he's going to try and disrupt proceedings.
Okay, and any sense about whether or not the two have been in touch? It does appear that there's a bit of a tussle, for lack of a better word, going on between the two in terms of both court appearances. So any insight into perhaps how much contact both have had, and if there's in fact now a Kailai camp versus a Bo Xilai camp?
Well, it's very unlikely that they've had any direct contact. They were both detained in March of last year, and what the lawyers and other people close to both families say is that they've been kept separately in different facilities since then. They are in different facilities now, and usually when people are detained and arrested, even if they are a married couple, they wouldn't have any direct contact in that situation. In terms of the split between the two families, yes, there does seem to be real division within the Bo family. Mr. Bo has 6 brothers and sisters. They don't all see eye to eye on how the case should be handled, and some of them really don't get along with the Gu family. They blame Kailai for all of Mr. Bo's problems, and then on the Gu family, there are sort of complications there. And there are figures who sort of stand between both, like, for instance, their son, Bo Xilai, who is believed to be in the U.S.
Okay, and just really quickly, the court trial will be held in Jilin, in Shandong province, which is a long way away from Chongqing. Any idea why it was chosen to try Bo Xilai at this location?
We don't know exactly why it's in Jinan, but we do know that Kailai's trial also took place not in Beijing, not in Chongqing, in a city called Hefei in central China that didn't appear to have any direct connection to the case. And so the thinking is that this is just a way of making sure that the Chinese authorities are absolutely able to control the situation. If it was in Beijing, there might be more of a risk that it would attract some public attention, that there might even be protests from some of Mr. Bo's supporters, whereas in these smaller provincial cities, people are less interested in the case. There are fewer journalists sort of based in those towns, and the local authorities are very much sort of under the control of the central authorities and are more likely to do everything sort of by the book.
Okay, but with that, I'm sure there's going to be an onslaught of foreign journalists going to the region, including yourself. And we will look forward to Jeremy Page reporting from the Bo Xilai trial. For more on that story, you can go to WSJ.com. I'm Deborah Kahn.